Hi YouTubers, Red Razor 56 here today for a video on problems getting the ball bearings out of your Polaris RZR, Ranger, it doesn't really matter what the brand is, out of your carrier hubs when you're doing wheel bearings. And this particular tip that I'm going to give you really would apply to anything with a big ball bearing stuck inside of a housing of some kind. But let's talk today about the Polaris RZR. And one of the things we run into, you know, you're doing your service work, you jack the machine up and you spin a wheel and you grab it 6 and 12 o'clock and you rock it and you're like, okay, time for new wheel bearings. What I have here today is, this is an old wheel bearing that's been just sitting around. I think it actually got caught in the rain, and this was a replacement. And of course it goes on the hub here, the hub, you know, that slides on the hub. But this bearing also goes into the knuckle, the steering knuckle, whatever you want to call it, the cast iron housing, and it's trapped down in there. And you know, you take that big snap ring and you get that snap ring out of there, and then you flip the housing over. And unfortunately I don't have a housing here to show you, but when you look at that, you run into this big problem. And this goes whether or not you have a press or whether you're trying to beat it out the old-fashioned way with a punch and a hammer. The factory installs those bearings with 3 drops of red Loctite, which if you've ever dealt with that stuff before, I mean, it sets up, you know, hard as diamonds. And it's doing its job. It's keeping the outer race of the bearing from moving around within the housing itself. But it also gets a death grip on the outside edge of the outer race, and it makes removal very difficult. Okay, you start to beat on the bearing, and before too long what happens is, and these are double row ball bearings, this particular one shares a common outer race and it has 2 inner races. It's got one east and west and one west and east, if that's the way you want to call it, and they go in there like that. And of course the balls are retained on this area right here, and they're backed up with a seal. Well, as you all know, the relief area that they give you to hit that bearing, there's 3 little dimples around there, and they're barely big enough to put even the smallest center punch on. And every time you hit it hit your punch with the hammer, not a center punch, but a drift pin or whatever, as soon as you hit it with your hammer, it just falls off, and you know, you're not getting anywhere, and it can get extremely frustrating. Okay, here's what you can do. I usually try to start off by using a 2.5-inch diameter flat washer, which I got from the big Tractor Supply store, Orscheln, farm stores, whatever, wherever you can find a big 2.5-inch diameter washer with a 1-inch center hole. Then I have a variety of driving tools that you can use to drive anything you want, and I happen to have an arbor pressed on here, and this comes apart like this, and it comes with a big variety of arbors. So there's the hitting tool, and then this is an arbor, and it can be flipped over to use it either way because it's step shouldered right here. And I put it on this way here and assemble it, and that goes right inside the washer. And then when I go to hit on the bearing, this is what you would be seeing on the bearing right here. And when I go to hit on it, it really gets a good hold of it. But it doesn't take too many hits for it to drive the opposite race out, and all the ball bearings go flying on the ground. Now this one is just loose, and you're trying to pound against a bunch of ball bearings that are floating in there, and you're absorbing most of the energy of your swings with your hammer onto those ball bearings, and it's not transferring it to the outer race, which is ultimately what needs to be driven out. Destroy the bearing, smash it, do whatever you have to do to get it out of there. Okay, now your inner races, the ball bearings, the seals, that stuff's laying all over the floor. You're cussing and hollering. That's the way it goes. Okay, got your shiny new bearing. There it is, man. We can't wait to get that installed. But before we do that, we got to get the remains of the old race out. Here's a trick I used, and it really worked pretty well. After the bearing was gutted, I took my MIG welder and I went in here, around here, and I put 3 pretty prominent beads of weld on here. I guess you could do 4 or 5, but 3 seems to do it. And then you'll notice this big flat washer lands right on that. And you're not going to break those welds loose, and you're not going to collapse the washer. And you get another benefit. When you do that, the intense heat from the welding procedure effectively kills the strength of the red Loctite. That's usually how you remove Loctite. Anything above the blue status is you apply a considerable amount of heat and it just fails from the high heat. So now we've loosened the death grip on there. Yes, we probably have increased the OD of this outer race because we've applied heat to it, but that heat's also immediately transmitted into the cast iron bearing carrier, and that also expands probably at about the same rate this does. Now with those 3 landings on there, I drop that washer in, I put my punch in there, and I hit it 2 or 3 times, and the bearing comes out so fast it's not even funny after you beat your brains out all day long. I know everybody doesn't have a MIG welder or even a stick welder at their disposal, but I'll bet you got a neighbor or a friend or a relative or something nearby that has one and can just do those 3 easy beads in there, and I'll try to zoom in on that so you can really see what's going on. And so we've just built the inside up just to capture that real thick 2.5-inch OD flat washer with a 1-inch ID, and now we have a place to hit the bearing. Bearing falls right out. Clean the inner side of your housing with a rag or a wire brush. Make sure it's perfectly clean. And to be perfectly honest with you, I am not using the red Loctite anymore. I've gone down to the 242 blue Loctite, 3 little dots of that, just to make me feel better and sleep better at night. That I did apply some sealant, but I'm here to tell you, those bearings aren't coming out of there. There's no possible way they can come out. And they're an interference fit, like a level 1 or a level 2 interference fit from the get-go. And of course, you know that you do install your new bearing by putting the bearing in the freezer for a good half hour, and an hour would even be better, and really shrink this material down as much as you can. And then when you're ready to drop that into the cast iron housing or the hub, when you turn that upside down and you take that bearing for the most part is going to drop right in. If it doesn't, get you a 2x4 and lay it across the top of the bearing. Make sure you're going in straight. Make sure the bearing isn't going into the housing cockeyed. Get that thing straightened up, and if you hit it 2 or 3 times just by rotating your board, I promise you that bearing will drop right in and you'll have a better day. Don't forget to install your snap ring. 80 foot-pounds on the castle nuts on the end. Always use another cotter pin. And hope this helped you in removing some bearings. And Red Razor 56 saying, live to ride another day.